Hello everyone and welcome to Muddy Beers 4x4. I am Robbie and today I am back working on the 1-ton swap on the Trailplug, my 1999 Jeep Cherokee XJ. Now in the last video I was able to get my Sterling 10.5 axle centered underneath the Jeep, and I was able to design and build a custom 4-link suspension that I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. Now I have since pulled the rear axle out from underneath the Jeep and I need to do some finish welding, but in the meantime I'm going to move on to the next part of the suspension, which is the shocks, or mounting the shocks. Now I haven't quite decided still if I'm going to go with an air shock or a coilover, but whichever way I do it, I want to mount it using this. Now this is a tube shock tower kit that I got from Barnes 4-Wheel Drive, and this is pretty cool. It comes with your upper hoop, which is already pre-bent, which is perfect for somebody like me who does not have a tubing bender. Then it comes with these extension pieces. The idea is the hoop slides inside these extension pieces so I can adjust the height for my application. Then once I figured it out, I simply weld her up and I have a pretty cool tube shock tower mount. So now that I have this, I need to figure out how I'm going to mount it underneath the Jeep. Let's get under there and check it out. So the plan is to mount this tube shock tower to the uniframe channel here underneath the Jeep, which is going to be a lot of work because it's going to have to go up through the inner fender liner. I'm going to end up having to cut all this out, rebuilding the tub. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think it's going to be worth it. But the biggest problem here is this uniframe channel. Now I would not trust welding something like this to this very thin metal. So the first part of this project is going to be to install these rear frame stiffeners. Now, this stiffener comes from Aries Fab, and there's a lot of companies that make them, but the reason why I went with this one is because it's a really simple design, but also because it's 3/16 thick, and I wanted something with a little bit more thickness to it because not only does it make things a little bit stronger back here, but I feel a lot more comfortable welding to this thicker material because we are talking about something that's going to end up holding the weight of the Jeep. So I'm going to get these things up here, get this prepped, and get these stiffeners installed. Now this is not a frame stiffener install video. There are plenty of those on YouTube, but while I'm doing it I decided I would add some advice because I have a lot of experience installing these. Now, as with any welding project, prep is super important. I like to start off with a wire wheel to try to get off all the old undercoating and paint, and then I'll go back in with a really thin flap disc to bring everything down to a clean bare metal. Maybe even use a little bit of acetone to clean off any other impurities. Shoot it with a little bit of weld through primer just to help with rust prevention. And then when you go to install the frame stiffeners, use a jack, install some clamps, then grab some more clamps. Make sure that thing is fitting nice and tight and that you have no gaps at all. When it comes to welding, don't be afraid to add a little bit of heat. Just make sure that you're concentrating the weld on the thicker material, on the frame stiffener itself, and then slowly pushing the puddle onto the thinner material of the actual uniframe channel. Just make sure you don't concentrate a bunch of heat on the uniframe channel because you can easily blow through it. But if you take your time, you have good clean metal, you should have some pretty good results and some good clean welds. Now I have my rear frame stiffeners all welded up and I'm super happy with how they turned out, but there's still one major problem here. There's just simply not enough room to mount this tube shock tower mount through this wheel well, which means I'm going to have to cut open this rear tub. Now that's okay because I was planning on opening up this rear tub anyway to make clearance for the big 40-inch tires that are going to be stuffed underneath this rig. Now, there are definitely many ways to go about this, but I think I'm just going to go for it and really open up this wheel well. So I'm going to start here right at the edge of the door. I think I'm just going to go up and follow this body line all the way across like a true comp cut. But instead of just going all the way across at the end, I'm going to give it a little bit of a round off here at the very end of the quarter panel just to get a little bit of that full body SUV body lines. But pretty much everything from here up has got to go. The gas lid all the way over is going to go. And I'm just going to round it off to give it just a little bit of that character and that body line. But there's really nothing left to do here but cut. All right, everyone, check it out. I got the rear quarter panel all cut out. Frame stiffeners are installed. And so now that all that prep work is done, we can actually get to the real purpose of this video, and that is getting the shocks installed so I can finish up my rear custom 4-link in the Trailplug. But I have to admit something first. It has been months since I've been able to touch this Jeep, and since I filmed the beginning part of this video, it's just been sitting here in the garage, and this summer has just been crazy busy. I've been spending a lot of time around the property getting my little hobby farm up and running, and it's just been really hard to get my hands on parts this summer, as a lot of people know. But I finally got some time to work on this thing, and I just got something in the mail that's super sweet and will allow me to move on to the next part of this build. So let's check it out. Check out this beauty. This is a Fox Racing 2.0 14-inch travel coilover shock with remote reservoir. Now, I ordered these up from AccuTune Racing. You give them some basic numbers and parameters, and they will send you a pre-tuned shock with the correct spring rates and all of that ready for your build. And, you know, I know this kind of goes against what I initially said I wanted to do with this build, which is remain a little bit more budget conscious. In fact, I wanted to try out some air shocks, but the more I read, the more I researched, you know, I figured this is ultimately what I wanted, so spend the money once, cringe once, and just do it right. So now that I have these, it is time to finally get these things underneath the Jeep. So let's get to work. Well, I got everything just mounted up and kind of mocked into place for now, and I suppose I should explain what I am doing here. So I am setting up this entire suspension up at ride height, and so that is going to determine how I set my shock up as well. So when you order a coilover shock like this from a place like AccuTune, one of the things that they ask you is how much shaft is going to be showing at ride height. Now, to determine that, all you got to do is factor in how much up travel you're going to have and then add 1 inch, because wherever your shock is, you want to at least have 1 inch of shaft showing at full bump, so that way you never fully compress the shock, because that's the best way to blow the thing out. So you always need about 1 more inch of shaft remaining. So I'm setting this thing up to have about 5 inches of up travel, so that means I want to have 6 inches of shaft showing at ride height. So that is what makes these adjustable tube towers from Barnes 4-wheel drive so nice, because I can just adjust the height, get this thing set up to where I have 6 inches of shaft showing. So that's basically what I have done here to set this thing up. Now the other thing is I am going with mounting this shock perpendicular or 90 degrees. So we can get into a lot of suspension geometry theory here, but this is just the easiest, most predictable way to set this up. And if you have the ability to set your shock up perpendicular, you have the room, which I do now because I cut out, you know, the whole fender, the whole inner fender here, then this is just an easy, most predictable way of mounting this, and it's going to perform great as a weekend rock crawler. So a couple other things here. I initially wanted to mount the lower bracket here right on the center line or top of the axle, but I didn't like the way that everything was kind of packaging together. I probably would have had to cut more out of the inner fender liner. I didn't want to do that. So what I did was I just mounted it off the back of the axle here. Now these are nothing fancy. They're just a straight up shock tab, but they're beef. They're like 3/8. What you have to remember is the entire weight of the rear of the vehicle is going to be on, you know, these mounts. And so you want something that's going to be substantial, something that you're going to be able to put a really nice hot weld on and really stick it on there. In fact, I will probably add some sort of something in here, some sort of plate in here to box this in to even make it stronger. So that being said, what I need to move on to is the mounting of my shock hoop here. So I have, you know, the mounting tubes put into place, and obviously they're not going to be this long, but this is just for mock-up purposes. So the reason why I even installed the frame stiffeners is because I wanted something substantial to weld these to. But I think in order to ensure that this is going to be nice and strong, what I'm going to do is mark out the location of these. I'm going to take a hole saw and I'm going to drill all the way through the uniframe channel. And then I made these little plates. They're going to go on the back side here. And so that way I can stick the tube all the way through. I can weld the plates onto the back side of the uniframe channel, and then I can weld the tube to the plate on the back and here on the frame stiffener on the front. And I know that thing is going to be super strong that way. So I'm gonna get to work doing that, and then I'm gonna be working on getting to mount these things a little bit more permanently, but things are coming along. The suspension is coming together. Well, I got quite a bit of progress done here now. I got the coilover all mounted and mocked into place, and I think I'm pretty happy with this thing. I got my adjustable tube towers all put into place. Got my coilover sitting, you know, in the position that I want it to. Everything looks good. I got the amount of shaft showing for my ride height, and so I'm pretty happy with the way this is set up. And I think I should be able to start actually burning everything in for real. Now, I wanted to show you underneath here what I had to do. So I managed to get everything, you know, drilled out and pulled into place here, and I got those plates welded up. And everything worked pretty good with that. I mean, welding underneath the Jeep here on the uniframe channel isn't fun. On the passenger side, everything's pretty easy because there's nothing in the way. It's just bare uniframe channel here, and it's pretty easy to get everything set up. I mean, I definitely need to put a cap over the tubes here so that way a bunch of mud and stuff doesn't get inside of there. But clean these up a little bit, finish welding some things here, and that's going to be done. The only thing of note is on the front mount on the driver's side, the cross member here for where the factory shocks mount, that covers up the uniframe channel right here. So I did have to cut that away. As you can see here, I need to clean it up again a little bit and cap it off so that, again, a bunch of mud and stuff doesn't get up underneath there. But I did have to cut that away in order to get this part of the mount put in, because it was covering the uniframe channel there. But other than that, I'm really happy with this. I mean, these are sturdy. There's absolutely no way that's going anywhere. And so I am pretty happy with the way that is mounted. It should be nice and strong. Now I really want to get these things all welded up for good and get the coilovers mounted, get the springs on them and everything. I really want to get this thing on its own weight by the end of this video. I just can't wait to see what it's going to look like. But before we do that, there's one last thing I want to show you, and that is I want to build a crossbar, like a support bar in between my coilover towers here, my shock towers here. That's just going to give it that extra strength, especially, you know, when it's moving around like this, just so that extra degree of strength here for my shock towers. But in order to do that, I need to get myself some 1 3/4 tube and then measure all the way across. It's going to be roughly 4 feet. It's actually almost perfectly 4 feet. But I want to make that bar removable, or at least a section of it, because if you've been following this build, you know that I relocated my gas tank to back here and I built an enclosure. And so I want to be able to remove at least the center section of that crossbar and still have it strong. And so what I got was these. I'm pretty excited about these. Maybe these are not new products, which I don't think they are, but they're fairly new to me. And they're basically like this tube clamp. These are from TMR Customs. Either end just goes into, you know, 1 3/4 tube, and then they just bolt together. And so what you're essentially going to have is the ability to unbolt this, you know, just remove one side and actually pull like a section of tube out. And for an application like this, I think that'll be plenty strong. These are made really beefy. They're pretty expensive, but I think it's a pretty cool trick here if you have an application like this. So I'm going to measure this out. I got to take it over to a buddy's house to get it bent, because I don't have a tube bender, because I'm going to make like a slight bend on the crossbar a little bit, just so I can clear my enclosure for my gas tank and all that stuff. I'm going to get everything welded completely in. I'm going to get my coilovers built, get the coils on them, the actual springs on them, mount them, and let's get this thing on its own weight and check out what she looks like here in the rear. Well, check it out, everyone. The Trailplug is on its own weight. Coilovers are mounted, and this thing looks sick. I do have the adjustable tube towers now all fully welded in. My little crossbar support bar here is complete, welded on. I even got my reservoirs, my remote reservoirs mounted here, and the coilovers are mounted as well. Everything looks good. I'm pretty happy with this setup the way it's looking right now. It is sitting a little lower than what I had thought, but I'm like, this is as low as this coilover will go. I can adjust this. I can lift this up if I need to. But for now, I think it looks pretty good. I do want to add a few things. I still want to add some gussets here on the lower mount, you know, and the upper mount, considering the fact that all the weight's going to be on this. But besides that, I like this whole setup. I may also perhaps add a little bit of a gusseting back here, maybe just like a little triangle piece gusset. I don't know, what do you all think, if I should do that or not? I think this should be pretty strong going all the way through the uniframe channel like that. But I think so far, this suspension is about buttoned up. So that is going to wrap up this video that is literally months in the making, and I hope you enjoyed it. I am just happy that I'm finally getting some progress done on this build. It is giving me more and more motivation. And now, I did say that I had this rear suspension about buttoned up, but I guess that would kind of be a lie, because I still do need to figure out bump stops, limit straps. I need to, you know, further gusset some things in here like I mentioned, and I do need to rebuild this whole inner fender well, which is going to be kind of interesting because of this, you know, shock tower. The way I designed it, it's going to make it interesting and how I'm going to figure out how to rebuild that. But either way, I'm just happy. Hope you guys liked the video and that you learned something. As always, if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you give this thing a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you are not already. Make sure you go check out the playlist for this whole 1-ton axle swap on our channel. I'll link it down below. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail.